Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grilling Truth Sports Network. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, as always, from the FF Face-Off, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. The Dallas Cowboys didn't make the playoffs, though. Does it worry you yet that Jason Garrett still hadn't been fired?
Yes and no. There were pictures of Garrett and his family on the field, and he was throwing passes after the game. And this is going to be, they say all the beat writers in Dallas, they say this is going to be a really, it's a hard move to make if you're Jerry Jones. It's an emotional move to make, but it's a necessary move. So it's only a matter of time.
But isn't that kind of the problem with Jerry Jones owning the Dallas Cowboys is emotions come in too much to play on everything he does?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course. So but it also shows that he cares.
Maybe. I mean, does it show that he...
Look at Dan Snyder. He kept Bruce Allen around for 10 years, and was there an emotional thing there, or was it just a bad decision?
I don't know, but the thing that strikes me about the Bruce Allen thing, we'll start off with that, is he gets fired, and they don't have a GM in place, but they're still getting ready to hire Ron Rivera as the head coach, and it doesn't make any sense to me why places like this in Cleveland are willing to hire a head coach without hiring a general manager first.
Well, Cleveland, they have John Dorsey. No, they didn't fire Dorsey yet, and I don't think they are.
Well, they should.
And now Washington, it wouldn't surprise me if they promoted a guy like Doug Williams, the general manager.
Oh, we got a National Weather Service has issued a statement, and my wife's phone's here, and it wasn't turned off. Sorry about that. Yeah, but the Ron Rivera thing, the Redskins do everything ass backwards anyways, and with, the Cleveland situation, I'd get rid of Dorsey just because Dorsey is the one that hired Kitchens, and Dorsey is the one that went out, and he got a lot of talent on a roster, but when you forget about the offensive line, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to throw a lot of money at wide receivers.
What, you mean if you're the Redskins or the Browns?
If you're the Browns. I mean, the Redskins it's just two bad organizations.
Yeah, but you can even include the Giants in that conversation. That all three of these organizations, they don't really have a direction, and they make really questionable moves. At least, speaking of the Browns, they have players a couple weeks ago yelling to the Arizona, sideline, "Get me out of here!" And I think that's a big reason why maybe they're moving on from Freddie Kitchens.
Well, that and the fact that they have actually been terrible. I mean, a team that people thought was, a lot of people, not me, but a lot of people thought was a possible Super Bowl contender has basically fallen by the wayside. And Baker Mayfield looked horrible yesterday in their loss to Cincinnati. And Cleveland is a mess. The Bengals are a mess. And I think my Bengals are kind of in the same position for me that Cowboys are with you, where it seems obvious that Joe Burrow will be the first pick. But with Mike Brown, you still got to worry whether he's going to do the right thing or not, because him and Jerry Jones, Daniel Snyder, all these guys have a tendency to do something stupid.
So you don't like the Ron Rivera hire for Washington?
No, I don't like any hire where the GM, basically what's going to happen is Rivera is probably going to be included on hiring the GM. And then the problem is, to have a great organization in any business, you need to have a chain of command. And the chain of command should be the owner, the team president, the GM, the head coach. And when you skew that, you kind of throw the organization into chaos. Chain of command and communication, I think, are the two most important things to being successful in any business. And there's no chain of command in Washington. And the chain of command in Cincinnati is some old dude with his daughter. And I think that's why these organizations have so much trouble. I mean, Jerry Jones is his own GM. No chain of command. It's like the head coach, or it's the owner and then the head coach.
My bigger problem with the Ron Rivera hire is the fact that he had 3 winning seasons in 9 seasons in Carolina, and they're scooping him up like he's Vince Lombardi.
Yeah. I mean, if they do it this way, I mean, it sounds like they're not even interested in hiring anybody else. So it's going to be Ron Rivera. The Cleveland situation, I mean, you got Urban Meyer or Josh McDaniels. What sense would that make? Either one. Josh McDaniels failed miserably in Denver. Urban Meyer is a college football coach that ran a college offense. And let's break this down. Urban Meyer was the head coach when Joe Burrow was at Ohio State. He decided that he wanted to go with the Dwayne Haskins of the world into Justin Fields because they fit his offense better. Joe Burrow fits a pro-style offense. Fields and them didn't. And the question is, what kind of offense does Urban Meyer want to run? And what kind of a talent evaluator he is? Because Joe Burrow is obviously heads and shoulders above both of the quarterbacks that were there. And he brought Justin Fields in when he had Joe Burrow. And Justin Fields is basically a really good college quarterback, doesn't read a defense real well, doesn't have great footwork or technique, and he passed on Joe Burrow. Burrow goes to LSU. Last year, had a little bit of a rough season, but he played great at the end of the season. And now he's the number one quarterback in the draft. So I would question him. And with McDaniels, outside of Brian Flores, who I think has done an outstanding job in Miami, there's a history here of New England assistant coaches being failures as head coaches, and McDaniels has already been a failure.
Yeah, absolutely. But is Josh McDaniels willing to leave the Patriots? Because I think the rumor is that McDaniels believes he is he's going to, he's Belichick's predecessor.
Yeah, but who's the quarterback?
Well, not predecessor. His, next in line.
Yeah, the guy who's going to succeed him.
Yeah, successor.
Yeah. So the question is this, though. Which situation is better right now, New England or Cleveland? And it may sound crazy, but you've got a 42-year-old Tom Brady. You got no running game. You got no wide receivers. In Cleveland, you got wide receivers. You got a running game. You just need to add a few parts on the offensive line and fill in a few spots on the defense, and you've got a team that could possibly be a contender. So why would you want to stay in New England if Tom Brady is old? And even if Brady comes back next year, this team is still old. So if you're Josh McDaniels being a young guy, don't you want to go with Baker Mayfield and see if you can turn that situation around? It seems an easier fix to New England if Tom Brady is done. And we don't know how long Bill Belichick's going to coach.
I think Belichick will want to see what he can do without Tom Brady because there's certainly ego involved. And I also think to that point, what does the New England Patriots, what does McDaniels and Belichick think of this rookie, Jarrett Stidham?
Well, my guess is this. It doesn't matter what they think because Jarrett Stidham is average at best. And people could say, well, they built Tom Brady, but they didn't because Matt Castle was there. He failed when he left there. Look at all the quarterbacks that were in New England. Jacoby Brissett was supposed to be the next big thing. I'll give him the caveat that there was a lot of injuries with the Colts this year, but in the history of the Patriots drafting quarterbacks, when have they been successful trying to draft a successor? Because they've drafted a quarterback 3 or 4 times over the last 6 or 7 years, and none of those guys have turned out to be anywhere near a Tom Brady. And Jarrett Stidham, he looked good in the preseason, but that's the preseason. It doesn't really mean anything. And I think I think Belichick will stay just to prove a point also. And McDaniels knows that. And right now, McDaniel's security blanket to me is the fact that Tom Brady and him get along really well, which means Robert Kraft is in his corner. What happens if this team starts to fall apart? Josh McDaniels is still a part of that, and there's no Tom Brady to shield him.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, if I'm Josh McDaniels, I get out while the getting's good. And the getting's good right now. If I'm the Cleveland Browns, though, I'll tell you, I'd go back to Greg Williams. I think this team's biggest problem is lack of discipline. And I don't know that Meyer or I know McDaniels will not solve that. I don't know if Urban Meyer can or not because Urban Meyer, let's face it, at Florida and Ohio State, a lot of things went on behind the scenes people didn't see that would scream lack of discipline. But at Ohio State, he's only playing 2 or 3 games a year where the other teams have commensurate talent to be able to beat him. Now, with McDaniels, I mean, he's a young offensive guy, does not scream going to get respect. I think they need an older dude that'll stick a foot up their butts, and I think Greg Williams would be perfect for that, and I think he proved that at the end of last season, and the way they did him was wrong, and maybe he wouldn't even consider coming back, but they need a guy like that.
You know, I really thought Greg Williams was going to be the hire for the Browns last year, and I was really thrown off by Freddie Kitchens. But then again, it's the Browns.
Yeah, but then again, this is something where no chain of command, and the quarterback basically picked who the head coach was going to be, I believe. And it was a rookie quarterback that they let do that.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's one thing.
Did you see that Baker Mayfield before the game? He was involved in trash talking with Bengals fans.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I think Bleacher Report had it. And Baker was saying to the fans, "Come down here," and the fans were smart enough to say, "You know, we can't do that."
Yeah, that's the only reason Baker said it. And did you see Baker?
What are you doing, Baker? What are you doing, Baker?
Well, how about this? They're down 2 touchdowns with 7 minutes left. He makes a big play, all right, and gets them down, and he scores a touchdown, and he's doing all this posing in the end zone and doing all these things, and you're still down a touchdown with 6 or 7 minutes to go, and you're playing a 1-14 team. So there has to come a point where a coach comes in and says, hey, you're losing to a 1-14 team. Shut the hell up and do something. But you don't, and it goes back to Freddie Kitchens after his, birthday or Christmas where he wears the Pittsburgh Steelers shirt thing. I mean, that is just a lack of control of yourself as a head coach. A head coach sets the example for his players. The players will act the way the head coach does. They take on the personality of the head coach. And Freddie Kitchens is just some soft, overweight dude that doesn't belong in the NFL, especially as a head coach.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree there.
All right, now a team that I think is going the right way about this is the Carolina Panthers, who have requested to interview Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. I think Bieniemy will be a extremely good head coach in the NFL, and he's the guy I wish the Bengals would have gotten last year, but they decided on Opie Taylor instead of a grown man. So what's your take on Eric Bieniemy being requested to interview by the Carolina Panthers?
I like that a lot. I thought Bieniemy was going to be in the conversation for head coaching jobs. I think he might have even interviewed for one last year.
He interviewed for the Bengals job. He interviewed for a few jobs and didn't get the job.
But he'll certainly get a job this year, and I think he'll be a good coach. He's a former player, former running back. He worked up the chain of command from running backs coach to offensive coordinator, like you should.
Yeah, and he was an offensive coordinator under Andy Reid. So Andy Reid, I gave him a lot of grief about the playoff losses, but there's no doubt he is a brilliant offensive mind, and Bieniemy's been around that for a few years. And I just think that Eric Bieniemy should be the number one choice for any team that needs a head coach right now. It shouldn't be the Mike McCarthy's and the Ron Rivera's of the world, because Mike McCarthy and Ron Rivera basically failed at their last jobs. So why not give a guy a chance who's worked his way up, who deserves a chance, instead of just hiring a retread failure, basically?
I mean, I don't know. I like McCarthy more than you do because he did win a Super Bowl and he won a lot of games in Green Bay.
Dude, come on. He had Aaron Rodgers. He had those receivers. He won a Super Bowl one time almost a decade ago, and they failed in the playoffs against teams they should have beaten so many times. I think this. Aaron Rodgers could have went down as the greatest quarterback to ever live if he'd had a better head coaching situation.
So you don't like any of that? I don't know. I think
I don't like McCarthy. I like Bieniemy. I like giving a guy a chance that deserves a chance. McCarthy had his chance. He lost. Game's over. All right, let's talk a little bit about last night. The Seattle Seahawks. And this was impressive, kind of like the Philadelphia Eagle impressive, where you got everybody beat up, banged up. They had to sign a couple running backs off the street, and they damn near beat the 49ers last night.
Yeah, and Marshawn Lynch was okay. I think the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs, they haven't blown a lot of teams out this year, and I think they get Philadelphia in Philadelphia this week. It wouldn't surprise me if Seattle's one and done.
Yeah, especially with Michael Kendricks tearing his ACL, and if he tore it, he's going to be out for the playoffs, and that's a huge loss for that defense.
No, it is.
So we'll talk about the playoff matchups here in a little bit. Anything else you want to touch on about this weekend or any news this morning before we look ahead to the playoffs a little bit?
I mean, we got through all the coaching. I mean, the Giants, they fired Shermer. They retained Gettleman, which is a big head scratcher.
Yeah.
But I think we expect that from the Giants at this point.
Yeah, because there's a handful of organizations that run ass backwards in the NFL. And unfortunately, both of our teams make that list. So, all right, let's go ahead. Let's touch a little bit on the playoff stuff coming up. A little bit of stuff happened yesterday. Tom Brady and Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report brought this up to me last night because I didn't see the end of the game. And he said to see Tom Brady at the end of the game, he looked bewildered and beaten, and he looked old. Do you agree with that assessment? Is this Tom Brady's last run in New England?
I've been saying, at least since last offseason, that this was year 20. This was going to be it for Tom Brady with the New England Patriots, and I do believe that they will part ways now. I don't think Brady's done. I think with what we are seeing with the Chargers, Brady wants to play on the West Coast. He wants to play in Los Angeles. I believe he's from around that area. I think Phillip Rivers is done. Wouldn't surprise me if they added Tom Brady for a year or two to see if they can do almost like what Denver did with Peyton Manning. Because the Chargers, we know they are extremely talented on both sides of the football, and if they are that special quarterback away, and I'm not saying Phillip Rivers isn't special, but he seems to be missing that it factor in big games. I think we're seeing a situation where Brady could potentially be a Los Angeles Charger in 2020.
All right. I don't think that solves anything in L.A., and I don't think it does anything for Brady because I think that Tom Brady is still an all right quarterback. But remember this, with Peyton Manning, you were putting one of the all-time great defenses with him, and Brock Osweiler won over half those games that year to even get him to the Super Bowl. So I don't think Brady would be the answer in L.A., Anthony.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind seeing Brady with the Chargers, a team that could never get over that hump, and Belichick without Brady. And now here's the answer. Who is it? Who is the guy who put it all together? Or maybe they really just needed each other this whole time. So I think it would add a nice storyline to the league.
Well, I think this. Even if they split up, I mean, the way this is looking with Jarrett Stidham there and him with the Chargers, we're never going to find out anything from that because I don't think either one would be very successful without the other one right now just because the talent around them wouldn't be the same as when they had each other. And in the AFC East, I mean, the Buffalo Bills are going to be a handful for as long as McDermott's the head coach there. And the New York Jets won their last 6 games
There
of
you
the
go.
season, and I don't
There you
think
go.
that was any mistake because that's a team at the start of the year I thought with if they would have been healthy all year, would have been right there with the Bills competing for a wild card. And then on top of that, this may be crazy, but if a guy could ever win Coach of the Year by winning just 5 games, it would be Brian Flores.
Yeah, I love that point on the AFC East. And anytime that Bill Belichick is coaching a team, they will at least be competitive. The AFC East could go from a laughing stock to the best division in football almost in a year. Because I love your points on the Jets. They're a team that I don't think they overachieved. But, if you think about if Darnold didn't have mono and if C.J. Mosley played a game, if Le'Veon Bell gave a damn, if the offensive line was better, I mean, this Jets team could be really, really good next year.
Yeah,
And the same thing with Miami. I love what's going on in Miami. I feel like Brian Flores is already making a case to be, not taking away anything from Bill O'Brien, but Flores is very, he could be, if the right things fall into place, the best Belichick disciple.
well, it's too early to tell, and we've seen coaches before that
Right,
coach
but look at Matt
better.
Patricia.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Matt Patricia is not in that conversation because
No,
I
he's
never
a
thought he'd
failure.
be any good anyways. Because he just looks like a big fat guy who's just looking to eat a greasy hamburger more than coach a football team. And I hate to be mean, but it's what it looks like. He looks like he's clueless when he stands on the sideline.
Right. He looks like he can be Pavarotti with the three tenors.
Yeah, only he probably can't sing. He probably sings as well as he head coaches. Um, but I like it. We got a Pavarotti reference. Plus, we talked about the Jets without me bringing up how they beat the Cowboys earlier in the year.
Well, you just did that, so.
I know. I had to get it in there, so I wanted to make it look like I wasn't trying. Because now it's not as big a deal since they only ended up like 2 games apart from each other. Um, my other question, we look at the AFC, and everybody seems to be just kind of coronating John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens. But I think a big question is this finally Andy Reid's year?
Yeah, I really like what's going on in Kansas City. I like their defense. I think they're underrated. I do think they need to tighten up defending the run because that's where they can still be gashed. Melvin Gordon had a pretty nice game against them yesterday. But I also like the way that they are running the ball finally now that they have Damian Williams back and healthy. And I know it was against the Chargers' weakness, as good as their secondary is, they do have an issue stopping the run, but it's not like he just had 80 yards and a touchdown. He had 134 yards and 2, so he really went off, which shows that they can run the ball, they can win the close game, they can also blow teams out, they can win multiple ways. This could be the best chance that Andy Reid has had to win a Super Bowl since those Eagles teams. I think this is a better Chiefs team than last year, even though they're scoring around a touchdown less because they're giving up a touchdown less.
Yeah, because they don't have to play the same way because they don't have to just try to outscore you as of late. And before giving up 21 points in the win against the Chargers yesterday, Steve Spagnuolo's defense entered Sunday's game allowing a league low 9.6 points per game over the previous 6 weeks. And the other thing is this, when you talk about a Ravens-Chiefs matchup, we have seen that twice in the last 2 years, and in both cases, without a defense that is good as it is now, the Chiefs have won both of those games.
Yeah, it does seem like that the Achilles heel for Lamar Jackson in 2 years is Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs.
Yeah, now I will give the caveat that I think that the Ravens defense wasn't near as good in those 2 games either as they've turned out to be. But you look at the rest of the AFC and the 3 seed, the Patriots, the 4 seed, the Texas. I think with the Texas, the big question is when does Will Fuller return? And can J.J. Watt return? And if he does, what kind of an impact can he make?
Well, J.J. Watt, he is expected to return, and some think he's going to return too soon, which could really set back, if he gets hurt again, his 2020 season, but I think he also realizes there's not going to be too many seasons left. He's really beat up. He's almost like the Gronk of pass rushers with the way he abuses his body and the way he puts his body out there. And Will Fuller, I think he should be back for the playoffs, but this is a guy that has always struggled to stay on the field as it is.
Yeah, and I think the question with Buffalo going into Houston is just going to be, can Josh Allen continue to not turn the ball over? He doesn't have a lot of weapons. And the thing that worries me here is because my initial thought is I would take the Bills. I think they're better coached. I think they're a solid team. But the Houston Texans have Deshaun Watson, and we've seen Deshaun Watson in games we didn't think he could win, just kind of throw his team on his back and carry him over the finish line.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen that less down the stretch. The Texans have not been as impressive to me.
How about this, though? I think a lot of that is because of no Will Fuller. It's harder to throw him on your back and carry him across the line if you don't have anybody to throw the ball to.
I get it, but I feel like the Titans have been impressing me more.
Oh, no doubt.
Because they don't have DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller and Kenny Stills. And A.J. Brown's a nice piece, but he's also a rookie. And
yeah, but they do have Derrick Henry, which means they can run the ball, and the Texans don't really have that.
That's the difference maker is Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and when I look at it, if Derrick Henry's healthy, I would almost expect the Titans to go win in New England.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry is healthy. He's coming off of a monster game. I believe he finished the year leading the league in overall rushing.
Yeah, and we've watched the Titans go to Kansas City and win already this year. They hosted Kansas City and won, right?
Yeah, and as good as this New England defense is, you can run on them.
Well, is the New England defense that good, or are they just playing, a bad schedule? Because we watched yesterday, Ryan Fitzpatrick saddle up and go 75 yards to beat him in the last minute.
Yeah.
So that's the question, and can they run the ball? So I think when you look at this, I think Tennessee and Buffalo, even though they're the road teams in these two playoff games, and they may not win, but I think those two teams are more likely to go upset one of those top two seeds and possibly make a deep run and even slip into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I like that. I think the Titans are the sleep. I said it before. The Titans are the sleeper team in the AFC, and Philly's that sleeper team in the NFC.
All right,
because nobody expects Philly to go anywhere, but this is a team. The Philly's a team that they are already built to overcome injury and adversity because of their 2017 Super Bowl run. Carson Wentz was on that great MVP, train ride, and he gets hurt. Everybody thought it was over, and Nick Foles comes in. So this is a team that knows how to play with the next man up mentality.
Well, that's a testament. They are going
to get Zach Ertz back. Greg Ward looks like a legitimate receiver. I mean, this guy can be a starter for them next year, and he was sitting on their practice squad.
Yeah, and it's a testament.
Dallas Goedert looks better than Ertz this year.
And this is the thing. It's a testament to Doug Peterson because this team, when you talk about the ability to overcome adversity, I'll go back to what I've said forever, is the team will take on the personality of the head coach. That, to me, is why Doug Peterson is a great football coach. He figures it out.
Yeah, no, he does. Peterson, Wentz, my mind is completely changed on both of those guys. And I think another underrated aspect about the Eagles, Jordan Howard, I don't even know, he played. I don't think he played much yesterday, but they now have a three-headed monster rushing attack with Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard. Miles Sanders, he can do a little bit of everything. Jordan Howard, your short yardage back, and Boston Scott seems like that new Darren Sproles.
Yeah, and I think this, though. I think beating Seattle is highly possible. I just think then if you're going to San Francisco, you're going to lose. Because I just don't think they have enough weapons unless they're all healthy. And even if they're all healthy, how healthy are they? Can they go at 100%? So I can buy them winning a game. I find it hard to buy more than one game unless all of a sudden they're going to Green Bay, which then I would give them a legit chance.
You bring up Doug Peterson and the head coaching advantage, and you also brought up in the past Kyle
I know.
Shanahan's play calling in that Super Bowl. And I like Kyle Shanahan, but you can't forget that.
Oh, and I didn't forget it when I watched it last night because I thought Kyle Shanahan kept Seattle in that game. I think he played it a little not to lose it. I think he played it a little safe a few times. That does worry me about him. But you still got to have enough talent to push it to that point in the fourth quarter. I do not write the Eagles off at all, though, because you already know what I think of Peterson, and that always gives him a chance, just like having Bill Belichick, always gives the Patriots a chance, or having John Harbaugh always gives Baltimore a chance. Another team with a good coach, Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints, who have been extremely hot. And the big question here is, can the Saints avoid kind of bizarre calamities that have befell them over the last 2 years? Because there's a case to be made. Without Stephon Diggs' miraculous winning touchdown catch in Minnesota, without the rule-altering missed interference call last year, the Saints could be going for a third straight Super Bowl championship, or at least in their third straight Super Bowl.
No, absolutely. And the Saints, I said it on last week's show with Sam and his quarterback rankings. I feel like, while Lamar Jackson, he's getting all the attention, look at what Drew Brees is doing. I think he's had at least 3 touchdown passes in 5 out of his past 6 games, something crazy like that. I think that early season Drew Brees injury also actually benefited him, because he's now fresh down the stretch with those 5 games missed. Alvin Kamara looks like himself. Even Latavius Murray, I believe, had 72 total yards yesterday and can give Kamara a break. Traquan Smith scored 4 times in his past 6 games, so there's a little bit more of a deep threat at receiver. It's not just Michael Thomas. And Jared Cook has been a machine since week 6 after starting the year looking like a bust.
Yeah, and the impressive thing is they're the 3rd seed. So they're going to get 1 home game against Minnesota. They got to go on the road twice. But the Saints were better on the road this year than they were at home. They were 7-1 on the road, and that one loss was early in the Rams game where Drew Brees gets knocked out of the game and Bridgewater has to come in. So I think even though they're the 3 seed, to me, they're almost a favorite in the NFC.
Is this the most wide open playoff picture in a long time, where you can make a legitimate case for, you can make a case for the Saints, the 49ers, maybe Philadelphia if they get through the first round and get Deshaun Jackson?
Hey, I can make a case for Minnesota if their running back is healthy. It's just, I can make a case for any of these teams pulling an upset. I don't think there's any of the 6 teams in the playoffs that couldn't win at least a game. And I think in the past we have seen playoffs, like when the Dolphins played the Steelers a few years ago in the playoffs. There's usually a couple teams where you just kind of know they're going to get beat 30-13 and they're going to be done right away. I think in the NFC, I think you have the Saints, 49ers. The Super Bowl comes out of the Saints or the 49ers. I don't think the Green Bay Packers are a concern for any of these teams, because what I see here with the Saints is you have a quarterback with the best wide receiver in the game, one of the best tight ends in the game, a run game with Alvin Kamara that has gotten better going back 2 weeks when he came back, and the defense gets after opposing quarterbacks. You got Marshawn Lattimore, who, if he stays healthy, can shut down the other team's best receiver. You got a San Francisco team that really doesn't have any big weaknesses except for a few injuries that if they get those guys back. And when I look at Seattle, I don't see Seattle or Green Bay, either one. They both have legendary quarterbacks that could do great things in the playoffs, but you'd have to do those great things twice to get to the Super Bowl. Maybe one of them can sneak into the championship game, but I don't think either one of them makes it any farther than that. So I think when I look at it in the NFC, I think this is a 2-horse race between the Saints and 49ers. In the AFC, I think legitimately Kansas City, Baltimore, Tennessee. Who else is legit? I mean, the Patriots, you kind of got to, until you kill them,
Yeah,
they're kind of like the vampire. Until you've driven a stake in Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's heart, it ain't over yet. So I would say half the teams in here, to me, are capable of winning the Super Bowl. I think that's close to what it usually is, but I think there is more depth in the 3 through 6 spot than what there normally is. That fair?
No, absolutely.
Can anyone stop Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens? Is a question from John on Twitter. And I would say yes, nobody's unstoppable. The Pittsburgh Steelers intercepted him 3 times and slowed him down. I think the question here is, how good is the Ravens' defense? And if the Ravens play a team like Kansas City, and Kansas City has trouble stopping the run, if Lamar Jackson cannot successfully throw the ball from the pocket with accuracy, that's my big problem, because I don't think he can consistently. And if he can't, and you get a team that even moderately slows down that run game, and you're getting a tackle in the backfield, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 14, and now Lamar Jackson's got to be able to complete a pass, and he's got to do it consistently. I don't know if he can do that, Anthony.
Yeah, the Ravens are a team that I feel like they must be playing with a lead, or they cannot be trailing by more than 1 score.
Yeah.
Because that'll expose their defense, and I like their defense a lot. I like their secondary a lot, especially the addition of Marcus Peters, who could be a difference maker going up against his former team and the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. He's a little bit more familiar. But if you can run the ball on Baltimore, and that is possible, or again, I think the big advantage is when Baltimore is playing with the lead, they cover up their deficiencies in their front 7, because they did lose a player, a lot of players with Suggs and Zadarius Smith, they're key pass rushers. And you can, when you're playing with the lead, you can blitz more. If you take that away, I think that defense could be exposed.
Yeah, but if you're Baltimore and your big game plan is to blitz Patrick Mahomes, you're going to lose. Yeah, it's just like if you're playing the Ravens and what you like to do the most on defense is blitz, you're going to lose. So that is my question. The Baltimore fronts, their defense is great when they can pin their ears and go get you. But there's certain quarterbacks that you play against that you can't. Patrick Mahomes is one of those, and Patrick Mahomes has had no problem breaking 30 points the last 2 times they've played each other.
Yeah, that's the key, is how do you contain Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, and that is a good question, because nobody has really figured it out yet. I think we've seen teams that have had success by playing a lot of zone over the top, mixing it up, and making them work to drive the ball down the field. But the one thing about them, and you've brought this up before, is they're a team in Kansas City that is more able to do that now than what they were, say, last year.
Yes. Oh, yeah, 100%.
But, all right, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to dive deeper into these playoff matchups later in the week.
As the week goes on, we will. Maybe we'll get a guest for tomorrow or something. What is tomorrow, the 31st? Do you want to do a show on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day?
Yeah, well, we could.
Yeah, we'll see. Stay tuned. We'll let you know tomorrow. Tell everybody where they can follow you, Anthony.
You can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru, and you can follow the show at the FF Face-Off, and we can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms.
All right, same with us. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Give us a like. Give us a comment. Go to iTunes. Give us a like. Give us a comment, but only if it's a good one. You can hear us on iHeartRadio also, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher. Tune in. Like I said, YouTube. You can follow us at Grueling Truth. Make sure you go give a like and a follow on our Facebook page, The Grueling Truth. But for now, for Anthony Cervino, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.